That's right. You're listening to the RC After Hours podcast, episode number 81. Can you believe that? 81 episodes. I'm your host, Andre Russo, and this evening's today's guest is Sam from Hangar RC. We're going to bring him up on the screen. In fact, he's right there now. Here we go, Sam. Are you ready for this?
Heck yeah, let's roll. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. So, we've been talking about this for ages and ages and ages to get Sam onto the podcast, and we were kind of waiting for things. I had to fly a plane and build a plane and everything. But hey,
true story.
First and foremost, welcome to the show. We've got it's a rare Saturday night affair over here, which is pretty awesome. So those people who are alive and watching the show now, welcome, thank you. To all the new subscribers to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Hey, how you doing? It's kind of good to be energized and having some fun. And like I said, we've got a guest, so we're going to jump into this show. If you guys have questions for Sam about the Hangar RC stuff, keep them in the queue, and we will get through, and we hope, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. Sam's got it pulled up as well. And again, welcome to everybody. All right, jumping into the show. Sam, first and foremost, introduce yourself to the RC After Hours community. What do you do?
I do airplanes. No, I'm a graphic designer by trade. And so I do a lot of graphic design work and a lot of videography. And it's, airplanes I got into, probably 5 or maybe 7 years ago. And I started just by building some simple planes, and now look what I'm doing now.
So, describe the Hangar RC evolution and why. Why did where was his genesis? Why would you do something like this?
Right. So being a graphic designer with my first planes, I was I didn't like the plain white foam board. And I thought, I'm a graphic designer, and I'll be honest, this is before I knew of rasterize and any of what he was doing. But I'm like, I can make these things look better. It shouldn't be that difficult. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, designing, and I should be able to do it. And so I decided to take, and it was my very first flight test tiny trainer. I decided I'm going to put a military type of scheme on it, and sure enough, it went, I won't say viral on the internet, but it had a lot of people who were asking questions about it on the forums and stuff, and the rest is kind of history.
So how long has the Hangar RC entity been around then? Like, when did you start this? When did you reach the stage that you are at now? Like when was that little, like, okay, let's do something a little crazy and let's get things going, and talk us through that.
Right. Okay, so I started out by doing these skins, and then I decided that, I want to try to take a stab at designing my own airframe. And I've never done that. At the time, had never done that before. And so I started doing some research on some airframes, and I really took a liking to what I call the golden era of RC flight, which is back in the 30s and 40s when they used to fly these planes. They're all trainers. They all had polydihedral like crazy, and whatnot. And so I started getting really interested in that. And I saw one that particularly caught my eye, and it was called a Buzzard Bombshell. And I'm like, oh man, that's a sweet plane. And I was so excited to see him. And my first time seeing one in person, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was giggling. It was so awesome. But so I took this Buzzard Bombshell, and I mimicked one of our planes at my first design after it, because I really enjoyed it. And I'll be honest, if it weren't for foam board, there's no way I'd be able to afford to get into the hobby at all. And so I had a friend at work who introduced me to the hobby more or less. And then I was able to design this one plane and do some skins on it. And about that time, I started to think about taking this to the next level and really, I mean, I really was enjoying the hobby and really enjoying what Flight Test did. And so I started to think about what can I do to contribute to the hobby, you know? And so I took this Vulture, the Buzzard Bombshell, what we call the Vulture, the HRC Vulture, and we started planning with that one airframe for about a year. And then in March of 2009, we officially launched. And, you know, I went around through the forums and found some designers that could help me, because obviously running a company and, you know, doing the skins and whatnot, I couldn't do it all. So I went around and found some amazing designers from around the country who are helping me with the designs of our airframes. And I tell you what, it's been a ride for sure.
No kidding. And you said something there, the foam board and working with the foam board. And I think a lot of us, and this is my own story, and this is me relating to this is how I started. And it's almost hilarious because I've gone full circle where I started off foam board extremely, when I first got back into the hobby back in 2013, it was a side hobby because I was racing and I wanted something in between races, so I didn't have the budget. Now, obviously the racing has gone away.
Right.
That's what happens when you crash your race car into a wall, right? Things change. And so all the other crazy projects and you know, the hobby kind of pushed up a little bit, but I still come back to enjoying foam board. It's something about, even if it's not planned, it's something about just cutting and going. And every once in a while I just go off in a tangent, particularly in the winter. You know, it happens. But it's fascinating that so many people that we talk to, this is how they got into the hobby. And we're seeing an evolution. I really do think we're seeing an evolution in design. I mean, you look at the plane behind you, and like 4 years ago, we didn't have curvature on the fuselage. Everything was a square fuselage because no one thought of, you know, and the fact that the foam is now allowing us to do more and more and more and more, it's pretty crazy. And so
for sure,
there are almost no limits to the designs. And so that's it's almost from your company standpoint. I want to know is like, what do you think? And one of the questions I wrote, and it's down further the tree, but what do you see for your company for this adventure in the next 3 to 5 years?
Right, for sure. Let me back up just a little bit. Going into the foam board thing, as a graphic designer, I mean, I started out working with foam when I was in school 20 years ago.
Nice.
And so it's kind of funny building with foam is because we were using foam to mount our projects. So I've been working with foam for 20 years. And once I figured out, you can build airplanes with them, I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I've been interested in the hobby since I was a kid, but I wasn't able to get into the hobby as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I started off actually by doing model rocketry. I'd go to, you know, whatever major chain box store and buy the little Estes, you know, rockets, and off we'd go. I'd go to my local high school and launch them off. Here we go. So the foam board is an interesting thing because it kind of fit me perfectly because I fell into it because I'd already been working with it. And so I'm like, this is a perfect fit for me as an individual because I've been doing the foam board for so long. And once I figured out I could actually build a plane. In fact, the first plane I was building, that tiny trainer, both me and my wife looked at each other and we're like, there's no way in the 7th layer that this is even going to, there's no way this can fly. There's no way. And, you know, that first flight, I was ecstatic. It was awesome.
Yeah.
As far as 3 to 5 years, where we want to be, as a company, we're making very slow, calculated moves. We don't want to rush it because we want to be around in 3 to 5 years, 10, 15 years down the road. So we're really trying to keep our moves calculated, and we're trying to build the company so that we can offer planes from here and forever, as long as I can keep doing this. And so we've been doing these airframes, and we've been averaging. We have three airframes out now, and I want to get to the point, and hopefully in 3 to 5 years, that we are releasing an airframe once a month. I think that's my ultimate goal. We're not there yet, but that's where we want to be. We want to continue to give back to the community what they've given to me, and give back to the hobby, and that's where we want to be.
Cool. So then what are some of the challenges what are some of the challenges that you're going to face as a company? Like where are your limitations, and what do you need to do to be able to get beyond those?
Right. The first one is being a little fish in a big pond.
Yes. Yeah.
That's probably the biggest one. Well, I think our biggest challenge right now is capacity. We're, a small company. We're growing, but it's steady growth, but we're small, and we want to make sure that we, can incorporate our growth, because there's nothing worse when a brand new company can't produce, planes. Say if somebody orders a bunch of planes and you can't handle that. So it's kind of interesting. One thing we learned over COVID was our manufacturing got shut down. We were outsourcing all our manufacturing, and they got shut down completely. We couldn't do a thing. And so we were supposed to release the Wasp early this spring, but we couldn't get any planes cut. Yeah, that guy right there. I've got one over here on the wall. This
Cool.
guy, this beautiful, beautiful big plane. So we kind of got stuck for it was probably about 5 months, because we couldn't get anything cut. And finally I went to our manufacturer and I said, I've got to have you cut some airframes, just a handful, so I can release this thing. So we did that, and then we realized, what, if we're gonna take it to the next level, we've got to bring this manufacturing in-house. Now, we had some of our manufacturing in-house, but specifically our laser cutting was done outsourced.
Yeah.
So we went and we found some investors, and we have brought 100% of our manufacturing in-house. And that's like our biggest thing. And we just barely got it less than a month ago. And we're super excited. This is going to allow us to meet that goal of releasing one airframe a month in the future. And we've got a ton of airframes in store. We've got so many things in the pipeline that it's crazy. It really is.
And the fascinating part is, and the Wasp is one of those examples where you link in with the community, and there's that is a kind of a cool thing. And there's I'll go full screen, but to your right, not is something that's been designed by a one of our good friends from the community, Dan Sponholes, and look at that beast, look at that little wonderful. We know Dan's got a very particular look, and when he told me what your interlink with him, that was very cool, because these are people that I've known for a very long time, being in the role that I get to shepherd over that wonderful event in Ohio every year. Not this year. Anyhow, the point is, there's this community, there's this amazing community of brilliant designers who just have really cool ideas, and the medium, the foam, and it's so much fun in that, if you do make an error and you do nose over an aircraft, some foam, some hot glue, some tape, and boom, you're back, right? And the design element of it is really fun and really intriguing, and those people who spend a little bit of time designing know the little hacks and tricks and everything, particularly with foam board. Like, there's always your CG is never where you think it is.
Yep. You learn the hard way.
Yes. Yeah, but that's so, like you said, with your manufacturing in-house now and all that stuff, like, what kind of volume can you meet? Like, if people are going, or have you not met that threshold yet?
we haven't met that threshold yet.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. I would love to get there, but once that threshold hits, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering then, like as you stage these, you said you've got your aircraft stage, and we're looking at one that's right behind you. Obviously, we're aiming for the podcast. So that's Texan. Beautiful. Talk about it. Like, talk about where this thing came from. Give us some of the descriptions about it and everything. Right.
So, like you said, and like I said, we have pulled these amazing designers from the community, and I wanted to do that because first I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And second of all, there's so much talent out there, out there in the community, and the collective mind is much greater than an individual mind. And so I went out and I pulled these designers in to work for us, and that allows me to focus on other things where I excel at, which is the skins. Not necessarily that I don't excel at designing some airframes, and we have a lot of airframes I'm designing in the pipeline as well. But it allows us to, me to focus on running the business and actually designing skins. And we've actually got another designer helping us out with skins as well. And this tells you how awesome the community is. This designer is from South Africa.
Cool.
And so we're going worldwide with it. But talking about the Texan, I want to speak briefly about the Wasp too. The Wasp was designed by a guy down in Texas by the name of Rick Harlan. Amazing designer. He loves to fly fast, and he loves to fly low, and he loves to crash. And so the cool thing about the Wasp, yeah, who does that sound like? The cool thing about the Wasp is it got put through its paces very early on. And the initial one was actually about half the size of the current one.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't realize until they get one, how big the Wasp is.
Yes.
It's not a small airframe. And so I going from the Wasp to the Texan, which was designed by a designer by the name of Jared Rottenberger, amazing designer in his own right. He is a master at molded foam. So the Texan will be the first of our, well, I guess the 7 had some molded pieces on it, but the Texan will be our first fully molded airframe to come out. And I've always had a passion for the Texan. We have a Hill Air Force Base in our backyard, and they have a museum there, and they have a Texan hanging up in their rafters. And ever since I've seen that, I'm like, that's my bird. So yeah. I told Jared, I said, hey, let's do a Texan. He said, great, let's do it. And so, a few weeks later, or actually it was only, he hammered that thing out so quick. It was only about a week. He had a Texan,
Nice.
And so I love it. And it's beautiful. The skins really take it to the next level. They are something that allows, and I don't know if you're like me, but I hate painting foam board. It's hard to paint. And I mean, there's some masters at it. I'm not one of them. So with the skin, it allows you to have that scale detail without having to paint.
Yeah, and you're using talk about the type of foam board you're using, because the foam board you're using, painting is like you said, it's hard because it's not the paper doesn't make the paint.
Right, and it's just the foam board we're using is the Adams Ready board. It's the Dollar Tree foam board. So it's not like it's anything special, and that we wanted it that way because it keeps costs down, which is great. But we didn't need to use the flight test waterproof stuff because we peel the paper off anyway.
Yeah.
To apply the skin, so it'd be pointless to use something like that. And our skins can be waterproofed by using some polyacrylic, some water-based spray polyacrylic. We did a bunch of tests in the first, and we found that the stuff you paint on with paintbrush actually yellows the paper.
Yeah, the Min-Max, yeah, exactly.
Yes. So we found out that the polyacrylic doesn't, and it was really cool because in one of our YouTube videos, I had a FT Explorer tail that I had skinned and sprayed, and I'm literally like holding it under my faucet. And
Cool.
that's one of the. I had a brand new iPhone 7 at the time, and it fell in the sink full of water. Luckily, it was waterproof, but different story.
Yeah, the what was it? What was that acronym I sent you that one time? Peel
Oh, what was it now? I can't remember.
peel glue, peel spray, whatever. Anyway, it
Yeah.
is a fascinating process, and the one thing I maintained while building my Canadian spec Canada 150 Wasp was take your time and enjoy the build experience, because this was the first time I'd really done a skin. I did one years ago where I printed it off on just normal paper, and the paper you guys are using and the print process you guys are doing are just phenomenal. And I still have to acrylic paint spray mine, or the poly clear. I still have to spray mine, but I've been putting the plane through its paces. If you watch some of the YouTube videos I posted, it has nothing to do with the airframe. It's all this guy's fault. But
Well, being a graphic designer, the paper we printed on was incredibly important. And we did a ton of tests, when we first started out, to determine what paper would actually print well, but also reinforce the foam. Because we're peeling the paper off, we're losing some of the structural rigidity of the paper or the foam. And so it's a heavier weight paper. And yes, it does make the airframe heavier, but I have only ever had one airframe that was so heavy it wouldn't fly, and it was a Vulture, but it was one that I put like 15 or 20 coats of polyacrylic on. And that's why it did fly.
Nice. Yeah, because if anything, the polyacrylic, you lose some of that, some of the roughness, or the roughness on the wings, so the air has nothing to grab onto after a while too. So actually, yeah, neat problem. But like building up my Wasp, I just loved how it went, and it was funny because the first time I did, I forgot to clean the nozzle on the spray can, and I shot it all across my hand and everything. So it's a different experience. Actually, yeah, and then there was that wicked blister.
Then the blister,
which is healing things. But it was so fun to watch the color, and I was showing my wife, and it was just like, it's just a different experience, and I think that's one of the fun things about it. And like you said, with the Wasp, you've got them in the Blue Angels, you've got the Warrior, the old Warbird look, your gray, which looks fantastic. And you were just telling me before the show, there's a certain new skin available.
There is. Do you want to announce it?
Oh, sure. Well, here, hold on. I'm too far away from mine. And the thing is, like you said, it's a big airplane. Anyhow, when Sam approached me and says, "Look, I want to send you a Wasp kit so you can see what it looks like and feels like and everything," I said, "Well, it's an F-18. There's only one F-18 I would ever fly." And so he went about and did a beautiful job. And if you check out some of the content on the social media and everything between us, he did a beautiful Canada 150. And for me, I mean, yes, Canada 150 is a couple years ago, but that was just the most stunning F-18, CF-18 demonstrator plane I'd ever seen out of the Canadian Forces do. And so it is gorgeous, even with the slightly rearranged. Now you can't see it behind me. I edited the nose. I was so annoyed with myself.
Happens to all of us. No big deal.
You classify this as a trainer, and I think you can go mild to wild on this airplane. But it's. Everybody I showed the airplane to at the field was just like, "That's foam board? That's foam board? That's that," and it's just the size and scale. It is a really big aircraft. So I'm kind of curious to see what some of your other releases look like as far as size and scale go. But how many sheets of foam is that, by the way?
Well, on the plans, it's, I think it's 5. I could be wrong. It could be 4.
Yeah.
But where we have a specific size for manufacturing purposes, we can't ship a full sheet of foam board. That would be ridiculously expensive. So it ends up being 9 sheets of foam, or 8 for our manufacturing size.
Nice.
It's a big airframe. It's a big airplane.
Yeah. And actually that was part of some of the questions and everything. Is that something that you are super cognitive about, or are you just like, oh, this is so cool, we got to do it kind of mentality?
Both, actually.
Both? Yeah.
So our first two airplanes were the Wasp and the Vulture and the 7. And the 7 is by far been our most popular airframe. It's amazing. It's designed by a local, actually one of my only local designers, a guy by the name of Kylan Browning. He's an amazing human being, but we are very cognizant of the size and the scale. With the Wasp, like I said, it was originally designed half size, and I said, we got to go big on this, and so yes, we are aware of the size, but if an airframe warrants being bigger, we're not afraid to go big.
Well, then would you do a half-size Wasp for kicks and giggles? And I guess what kind of motor would that have been, like a multi-rotor kind of power supply on that one?
So the funny thing is the very first time we took the Wasp up for its maiden voyage after we had developed it, we flew it on a 2212 1400 kV motor. And we 3D print all our motor mounts. It melted the motor mount because we were balls to the walls the entire flight on a 3S 2200. Yeah, there you go. So we decided we needed a bigger motor on that airframe, and so we put one on it. But yes, it's definitely something we could do half size, and in fact the half size plans are already done, and it's been suggested by the designer that maybe in the future we release a half size one. Man, that thing's beautiful.
Yep.
After living in Canada for a couple of years, I think I'm going to have to build me one of those for sure. Oh boy. So I got a mosquito flying around my shop and it's driving me nuts.
Let me get back to the microphone. Yeah, that is when I saw that, I just said, no, that's that plane needs to be in that color scheme. And the fun part for too sure. Is you have so many options. Like, do people come in after you've got a design and say, hey, here's actually, would you consider like doing out templates and people could do their own skins custom order kind of thing? Or is that just too crazy?
Well, that depends. Our skins are kind of our bread and butter. That's what sets us as a company apart. So we kind of hold those kind of close knit to our hearts. We keep, we give out the free plans and whatnot, but the skins are kind of like, that's our thing. But we have sent, much like you, people custom skins. The cool thing about our process is we can customize the color of the skin to anything relatively easily, as long as it's not a too complex design. Like your Wasp, it'd be a little bit harder because there's a lot more to it. But with like the 7, for example, as long as the design doesn't change, a simple color change with the skin is super easy. Like we just barely printed off a navy blue 7.
Yeah,
we've never done a navy blue 7, but someone called in and wanted to order a navy blue 7, and so it's something we definitely can do.
Interesting. And it's like you said with the Texan, there's so many options and so many different uses. Like so many, like the U.S. Air Force had so many different trainer colors. We've got the Harvard, I'm Canadian. I'm going to want the Harvard, Canadian, right? But why would you not? And like you said,
exactly,
you get in as a designer, and I'm just we're rolling through the page for the website. By the way, for anybody listening to the podcast, is thehangarrc.com. That's a hanger with an AR.
Yes, we get it all the time. Make sure you spell it with an AR.
Yeah. Fun little aircraft, simple aircraft. And is that part of your strategy as well? Just build the range and or is it just as the aircraft, as a design comes on stream, you just go with it? Or are you trying to stick with a certain, this is stuff that Alpha from Motion RC talks about all the time, sticking with a power system that will work. That way you can build up your, especially for your store, if people are buying power kits and everything. Is this a something that's in the back of your mind when you're designing?
Absolutely. And to let you know, right now our store is small, But once again, we've only been really doing this for about a year. So we're trying to build up as we source suppliers and whatnot for our parts. But when I originally started doing these, the Vulture actually started out on a smaller power system, and we upped it to make them more standard. It was only when we flew the Wasp and burned the motor mount off of it that melted the motor mount that I realized we can't always use the same power system. And I want to keep it fairly consistent because I want to keep it easy for someone who's just getting into the hobby, you know. So if you look at it, the 7 and the Vulture right now, the only power system that's available for the Vulture is the exact same power system that's that the 7 runs, minus a couple servos, because it's a 3-channel versus a 4-channel. So I want to keep them as close to that as I can. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do it across the board. But the other thing about that 2212 1400 kV is they're available everywhere.
Yeah.
They're a dime a dozen, and every single person who does RC has at least 10 or 15 in their arsenal. You know, they're very common. And so we wanted to keep with the plane size that allowed us to use that power system if we could. Now, obviously the Wasp does not, but the Texan will. The Texan runs off that exact same power system, and our future airplanes will. We've got a couple other smaller ones planned that will run off your standard quad motors. But I really like that 2212 1400 kV motor.
Nice. And then 3S, 4S, you just decide on your prop and everything depending on who's flying and their style. I mean, everybody's going to fly a little differently. Some people want to fly scaled, and other people just want to have that power on reserve, right? So lots of flexibility, lots of options.
For sure. And I do believe our 2212 1400 kVs do allow you to, I think they can run a 4S. So
nice. Yeah, because you were showing me some of the things like your ESCs and various pieces of equipment. Any plans for any kind of jets or EDFs in the future?
Absolutely. We funny story, prematurely jumped the gun on our EDFs. We ordered a bunch of EDFs from our supplier and got them in stock, and then realized we weren't ready to release the specific plane for the EDF that we ordered them for. So we have EDFs on our store, but we don't have a plane that uses them. But yes, there's a couple right now that are pretty close in the queue.
Nice.
But
nice. Yeah, that's something in my I've got a cargo plane that I'm working on, and then I've got a spare 4S 12 blade 70 millimeter that I've got to design something for. And it's one of those things where, you know, it's a cold night, you sit down, you start sketching, and then from there, you know, something comes out. And that I look at all my to-do lists from last year, and I'm like, I didn't build this one, I didn't finish this one, I need to make a new version of that, and just, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about I love doing product R&D on foam board, because it's just like, oh, that sucks, get rid of it, you know. And it's like, oh,
and you're out a couple bucks.
Exactly. As much as I would love to build with some of the water resistant stuff, the price after shipping everything now, it's gotten too much. And I have access to Elmer's, and I've got access to Adams, which it was funny because one afternoon we were discussing the difference between the foam board I have here and the foam board you sent. And I'm like, yeah, there is a definite quality, definite product difference. And all I could think of is it's either, and I'm still convinced as being a manufacturer of the same place, but your paper peeled and the paper had a different consistency, as I recall. So,
right.
Yeah, Either way, foam board, you start building, and if you're not skinning it, it doesn't make a difference what you use. I mean, there is a slight difference between the Adams and the Elmers, but in you know, once the aircraft is up, you very rarely notice the difference. It depends on what you're doing, but if you're skinning it, there's a different product difference there. So
and the skins do reinforce it. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted, because I knew we were peeling the foam off. And I wanted a heavier skin that would actually make it a little bit more durable. Because, I mean, my first Vulture, I'll bet I had 50 hours of flight time on that foam board airplane. Yeah. And that's unreal for a foam board airplane. I mean, once you consider weather and humidity.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, this is it. My very first scratch build, when I did my first FT racer, there was a yellow black one. when by the time that poor airplane was done, it was probably more hot glue and tape than foam board because I drove that thing hard. That airplane just wanted to be fast and low, and and you're sitting there and you go, well, I would never do this. I would never fly. I fly my foam board airplanes completely different than what I fly like my my ready to bind and fly style aircraft. Those ones are taking a little different. But if I go and I ding a post with my foam board wing, I'm giggling because it's just like, yeah,
for sure,
fix it and go again. And it's not like
absolutely, and it's so easy to fix too. Even with the skins, I mean, what you did on the nose was amazing. Yeah, they got a little scratched up, but
it came back
from here, I can't even tell.
Well, I mean, I'm there, but
there you go.
It's a little it's got a little turn to the right, I think, but you know what? That won't impact the performance of the aircraft. It actually gave me an opportunity to fix a couple things because, so for my end of the airplane, we think my motor, which I picked up from Banggood, might be a little heavier than the stuff you guys suspect. So my CG was not what we were expecting, and so it flew the first time, but boy was I on it, and it was a fun flight, and I would have brought the thing back. But there was a walker in the park, so I set it down and did like minimal damage, comparing it clipped a tree. And the second flight, I threw it wrong, full on. Andre messed up, and I changed the prop. I broke the prop on the first flight, so I changed to a Master Air Screw 10x7. And the video, if you watch my last update, it's there. And that plane corkscrewed off the back end of it.
Yes,
I'm like, the controls, I was full rates, and I had nothing for it. I'm like, wow. So anyway, I was a little annoyed I broke the nose up, but it actually gave us a chance to look at some little tweaks that you guys could potentially make, which was fun. And I fixed my CG. I put some change into the nose. I rebuilt the nose because where some of the bends happen and everything, and flew it late. So it's going to go out tomorrow, which is irrelevant to the podcast, but to anybody listening. But I'm going to get out flying with that thing very soon. And I'm flying on, actually what I did when I reinforced the nose, because I knew I had CG, I could afford to put weight in the front. I actually built up the nose section, and the battery just kind of sits right in there.
Nice.
So
perfect.
Yeah. Well, and just allowed me to do it. And you got to love foam board for that. Cause I literally after the damage, I said, okay, let's salvage as much of this nose as possible. And I peeled everything back. I used a little, denaturalized, alcohol and popped as much of the glue away as possible. Got the paper without, I ripped the nose section and where it loops around by accident, but I mean, you can't even see that because it's underneath, and just and went at it. So the only thing I really have to do is spray that airplane, and it's gold to go again, and it will be flown hard all winter long. Because
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's got to, right? But I went 4S with mine, and I think that's the cool part too, is like, yes, it wants power. This plane wants to fly. It wants to fly fast. So I'm looking forward to getting down with, I mean, that pack wasn't even fully charged. I'm looking forward to getting down. I might try some other weight batteries, but I think my 4S batteries are the 4S 2200s are 40C, which the thing wants, because it's, what do I got in the back? I initially was going to use a 60, and I had a 70 with a really long cord set on it, a really long power lead on it and everything, so I just went with that one. So it's got a 70 amp ESC.
Yeah. And that's insane.
That's pretty good. Okay.
We spec a 40. So
you spec a 40 on that motor? Okay, well, my motor, like I said, this was the problem.
You know what? Maybe it's a 50. It's a 50.
It's a 50? Yes, right, because I did have a 50, but when I put that motor in, I just had a 70, and it was a spare one out of, I think, my FMS A10 when I switched over to 80 amps. So, all right. What's your ultimate build? If you were to say, this is what I want, besides the plane standing over your shoulder right now, what is that one plane?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
Oh, I know. Apparently I'm disarming in my questions, right?
Yeah, right. God, well, as a kid, my favorite plane was the Blackbird. And whose isn't, right?
Oh, yeah.
But so tough to make out of RC.
Yeah.
So tough. If you've been following Jonathan, I think he is on Facebook. He's been trying to do, and he's been flying with Overstreet quite a bit. Yeah, it's so tough to get the CG right. The thing doesn't want to slow down,
Yeah.
So if I had to say, the Blackbird would be it, but I know better. And so, I love the Texan. I love the Sky Raider. I love the DC-3 or the C-47, however you want to call it.
Yep.
So, I mean, those are probably some of my favorite military aircraft.
Yeah, and as much as I enjoy the civilian ones, there's just something sweet about, something that's got a little bit of a military silhouette to it. It's just, you just smile. And, are you going to look at any aircraft with landing gear?
Yeah, we've had a lot of people talk about this. I want to throw one more plane in there because I have to, and the F-14, of course.
Yeah,
but that's a whole other story for another day. Anyway,
would you work with a swing? Would you try and get the mechanism to work, or is that just too much voodoo?
I would love to. I really would. Probably too much voodoo, though. But anyway, as far as what was your other question? I can't remember. What did you just ask me?
Landing gear.
Landing gear. Yeah, that's right. We've had a lot of people, and the funny thing is my father-in-law, he comes over here and he's not critical of my planes, but he's critical of my planes. He's all, you need one with a landing gear. I haven't found a solution that I'm happy with that can be universally adopted, because once again, if we have 10 different types of landing gear, that's 10 different parts or more that we have to stock. And that gets expensive. Not only in storage space and warehousing space, but that just gets expensive. So I want to find one that I can pretty much put on any airframe. But yes, we are working on it, but we haven't got there yet. Quite. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's funny, like I've struggled to make landing gear work on a lot of the airplanes, because you just, unless you're really reinforcing where that gear sits, it's one, weight, and two, drag, and three, it just gets ripped off.
Especially on foam board. Yep.
Yeah, the tail draggers seem to do a little better. And like you were saying with the SR, the problem with something like the SR-71 is that battery weight is so far out into the nose, right? That as soon as you come in funny, and I've had it with every single EDF that I've tried to build, and it's always like, how do I manage that forward weight? Because the nose is getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner as you go along, and as soon as you land, it's all that dynamic weight of the nose coming in, and I don't care how you flare it, the thing just pancakes, and next thing you know, you've cracked, and the crack always goes further back after the repair, right? So it's so it's just this amazing dynamic problem that we're chasing all the time. But and again, gear is it, but I it's funny because I think I've got 2 FT planes in my entire fleet that have ever had landing gear, and the rest of them all been belly landers. And there's just something simple, elegant, nice about them. The size works, the dynamic. Every time I go fly a jet or anything like that, it's okay. Check the retracts. Okay, let's get this thing into the car or the gear. I'm done flying. Oh, let's get a battery out. Let's close the retracts. Let's put it in the car. What did I just knock off? Well, I'm doing that, right? Yep. So it's just, this is what I see.
And I like belly landers because they're simple. I mean, our whole mantra is easy to build, easy to fly, right? And the retracts are the landing gear is just another complexity. Not saying we won't ever get there, but right now it's just another complexity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do you see? Okay, this is a good question. What do you see for the future of this hobby? What's that something you're looking for to take your designs or your ideas, or like what piece of tech, would make this even sweeter for you?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm relatively new to the hobby, and there's a lot of things I haven't done in the hobby. One of those is using some sort of flight controller. As much as the flight controllers are cool, and I want to try them, and especially for someone learning, it's almost flying with an RC airplane is a visceral response. It's almost something that you need to, be attached to. And with those flight controllers, you almost lose something. And yes, for someone learning, it's a great learning tool, but to fly an airplane full rates, nothing assisting you. There's something about that.
Nice. Actually, speaking of full rates, when you fly your WASP, are you 100%?
No.
No? I got mine on
No,
100.
no.
I couldn't fly it on low rates. I went 100 with 30 Expo, and I was like, okay, now I've got it, but I may need to fiddle around with a few things.
Yeah, I think I have it on a three-way switch, and I think I have 100, 60 or 70, and then like 30 or 40.
30 or 40?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever flown it on the 30 or 40, but I'm probably
like, wow.
around 60 or 70.
When I flew it, I chuckled, right? Because the day I got it, the GoPro wouldn't go anything, so I threw my phone at my buddy, and he was like, "You did a roll within like 2 minutes to less, like 20 seconds of being flying." I'm like, "Well, I gotta test the aircraft. If it doesn't do that, we know we've got a problem, right?"
Yeah.
So he thought that
it
was
loves to roll too.
funny.
Oh man, it loves to roll.
It's a jet. The only thing I chuckled with, and I said it in the video, is I was in failing light. Like, it is dark at 5 o'clock here now, and I went out and I got distracted by the people walking across because I was going to come in and do a low pass right past the camera, and the pathway people started coming across, and I looked up and went, am I coming back, or is the plane? And I got, I'm like, oh, it's going away from me. Okay, let's turn that thing around, right? Because it's just like the red and everything. So fly. I bet the gray is the same. You fly that thing on a good, clear, non-cloudy kind of day, because otherwise it's like,
Yes. And it has such a presence in the sky because it is so big. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Love the Wasp.
Did you when you were designing that, did you guys consider rudders or anything like that, or was it just not enough throw on it?
It wasn't enough. There really wasn't enough. We looked at all possibilities, and to put it, because the way that's an extra 2 servos because it has 2
more tail weight.
So yeah, more tail weight, and we're just like, it doesn't need it. It really doesn't. Who flies with rudders anyway?
Depends on the plane. Coordinate a turn, buddy. I get it. Have you guys tried any crazy mixings as far as, because if you set this thing up on a 6-channel receiver, you can do all independent channels between your 2 ailerons and your the 2 elevators. So there's 4 servos in the plane. Have you guys done any cool mixings to have a little bit of fun with it?
I have not personally, and I can't speak for Rick, the original designer of it, but I have not played with a whole ton of mixings on it. In fact, I haven't played with any mixings on it, but you probably could throw in some flaperons, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, to bring it in nice and, but it lands really well. And then the other question I was going to ask you, do you guys, do you leave the prop freewheel on landing, or have you guys set that up to stop?
I've always let it freewheel, and I've never broken a prop with it, believe it or not.
Cool. I only snapped it because I bounced the thing off the deck. But, details. It was R&D testing, gosh.
Right.
We all crash.
And that's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing about RD and the testing you've done. Even though it's a final product, we're always looking to improve our product.
Yeah.
And so if someone has a suggestion and they build one of our airframes and like, you know what, this would be really cool if we had this or this, something, we're always open to suggestions. We're always open to we founded the company on customer service. Mm-hmm. And so we're always going to at least take a look at it and send it back through our beta group if we need to see if it warrants that change.
Yeah. I mean, literally, my nose crash was like, well, okay, if I just do this here and there. And really, the only other thing I had found was the spot where I held the aircraft. I was like, if we put a former in there, then that area is not going to get squishy over time, right? Because there's so much, you're grabbing, right. You're doing the death grip. But on 4S, boy, that thing had punch. I was giggling the first time. It was like, oh, this thing wants to go, and it's just sitting there.
Just let it go.
Oh, yeah. And
send it, man.
Well, hey, the third, the video where it flew, that was just right. A nice toss, 50% power, and it kind of, it took off and flew away really nice. Yep. The first one wasn't bad, and it does, you've got to watch your ailerons, and then like that second throw, that was just, I goosed the power, wasn't paying attention. So and again, no reflection on the aircraft because it clearly flies beautifully. It was just stuff to remember.
Right.
Cool. So we've talked about what's next on the roster. You've got your nice Texan, Harvard, and everything. We've talked about what's next. I'm going to put you through the hot seat now. I'm not going to go too many, but I love the hot seat questions. We actually haven't done the hot seat well, and I think you're the first guest in a while as well. I've been rambling on these ones and everything, but the hot seats are fun. So the idea is quick answers. You don't have to elaborate too much unless you really want to. And there's a bell. Yeah, and there's 40 something questions because I posed to the chat if anybody had any extra questions, but everybody's kind of shy. They're all gun shy right now. So
come on, guys.
If you do, I'm watching and paying attention. All right.
Yeah.
So random generator question number 37. Will it be a good one? Oh, we're already starting. It's fun. Vanilla or chocolate?
Oh, vanilla all the way.
Nice. See, that's what we're looking for. Hot seat questions. Why vanilla?
Another topic for another day.
Now, you've said you've flown for a while. You've been in the hobby for a couple of years. So what was your first plane?
It was the Storch, actually.
Nice.
FT Storch.
The FT Storch. Nice. Actually, that's a plane I actually they were testing out a couple of years ago when I was at the Flight Fest. I never got my hands on it. I never went with it. What did you think of it?
At the time, I thought I'm never going to give up on a plane. Call me stubborn, but I'm never going to give up. I gave up on it. I could not. But the guy that kind of got me into the hobby, I could fly it with him, but I only ever got off the ground myself once, and it had landing gear, and I don't know if that had contributed to it, but I couldn't get the thing to taxi. I couldn't keep it in the air. I'll bet if I go back to it, I could now. I have more experience. But after that, I went straight to the tiny trainer.
Nice. And it's funny because as I look through my, every once in a while, the photos pop up from memories, and I look through some of the aircraft, and I shared with you some of the ones from early days that I was developing. And there were just planes that were just... like the CG was wrong, or they had tip stall tendencies, and now there's stuff that when I design, it's like that worked. Actually, yep. And so it's one of those things where you get used, the tricks, and you get used to working with the foam board. The mediums, what do I need to do? Yep. And we tend to make those classic mistakes where we undersize, particularly on the tail section, we undersize the elevator and rudder, and that really impacts how well the aircraft performs.
For sure.
All right. Question number 25. What do you think of the future? Well, what do you think of FPV?
I've never flown it myself. I've actually been under the hood with someone else flying. I think it's rad, but I don't trust myself. I have my Part 107 license at work. Oh, sorry, this is a quick question, but I fly a drone, Phantom 4 for work, and for my quote unquote real job, I guess, if you will. And I can fly FPV through that, but I just don't trust myself yet. I don't know how you ever get to that point.
I think you just need the right. You need you send it. Yes, you send it. You get the right gear, and then like the guys always laughed because when I first started, they're like, "You flew through those trees like there was nothing there," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, the teleporter goggles." That's another joke, right? But you just need the right airframe, and it's funny because this year was sort of. I was on a path that I never got to my fuel and everything, flying and all that, but that'll come for 21. But I really got back into flying FPV, and there's a bunch of, beautiful aircraft that I've been spoiled and enjoying. And I've, get the classic was, Andre will never finish. Sorry, I got away from my microphone. He will never finish a wing. And voila, there's the Defiant D28 is in my hands. Okay, it looks terrible as far as my laminating job, but c'est la vie, right? I mean, I don't see it when I'm flying it with FPV.
Right.
I think it's about finding the right aircraft, and we'll work on that. We'll get you flying FPV. Okay. All right. Next question.
If you ever make it out to Utah.
Oh, man. I still there's a beautiful cub in Illinois that maybe one day I'll get.
Go.
So
there you go.
Question number 20: glow, gas, or electric?
Electric. No question.
No question, eh? I'll let you know what my thoughts are on that in the next couple of months, right? Because I've got the wet planes that's growing, and that's just me, being a podcast guy and people asking questions. Well, what do you think of this? So I've got to experience all this stuff so I can feed back. But then, like I said, I come back and I say, I love foam. I love these development projects. Like one of my highlights of the year was working with Shauna from Defiant Wings and developing this silly little thing, or being, having a hand in it. Anyhow, Sean, I won't take credit for Sean's hard work. But, we look at the notes and everything we talk about and the stuff we exchange while building stuff. And it's just like, yeah, try this, try that, and, it's just, it's been so much fun.
The other stuff's so expensive for me. And, I may get into it someday, but it is expensive compared to, foam board. And so
love
who
foam
knows?
board. Love it. Like I said, there's something magical about just saying, I have an idea. I don't know if it's going to look anything like what I'm thinking, but I'm going to start cutting, and no plans, just a ruler, a knife, and a hot glue gun and a blister.
Been there, done.
Mustang or Spitfire?
Ooh, I'm going to have to go with Spitfire.
Lovely. Someone's gonna be really annoyed with this. They're gonna be wearing their headphones.
I know.
I love the Spitfires. I could probably replace every single warbird in my fleet with a Spitfire because they fly. They do something special. Nothing wrong with any of the Mustangs or anything, but there's just something beautiful about a really nice Spitfire. All right.
Yep.
Man, I'm getting all the same questions over and over. Come on, random generator. Yeah, look at that.
So much for
last three questions have been exactly the same. Landing gear question: tricycle or tail dragger?
I'm gonna go with tail dragger.
Nice.
No
okay.
reason.
You're gonna laugh. I've been spoiled. I fly out of a park. There's a gravel strip.
Right.
Occasionally I go out to the club, and the club will be a bigger part of obviously when I start flying the wet planes. And I laugh because last year I went out, I was getting checked out, and I've got my Tundra high wing and everything, and I ground looped this plane. I'm like, I've never ground looped the Tundra ever, and it was just the grass, and I couldn't get the tail wheel to do what I need to do. But I was like, wow, and that's the only problem with the tail dragger. And then I was telling a story on a previous podcast where last year I'd been flying my jets, and they're all tricycle gear, right? And I'm flying the jets, and I go out with the Grand Tundra, and I do the exact same thing. I'm not on the rudder fast enough, right? Woof, around she goes. I'm like, wow. So it's interesting because it's just there's tricks and tips and ways to approach every single airplane, and then holding the tail down on the tail draggers and stuff. So cool. All right. Again, repeating. Here's a good one. Mode 1, 2, 3, 4.
2.
Had to think about that, huh?
2.
Had to think about that.
I did. I did.
What radio do you fly, man?
I started out on a Turgy 9X because it was cheap.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Great beginner
radio
transmitter.
Yeah.
Horrible to program. I couldn't figure that. And the resources out there are like non-existent.
Yep. And now?
The one I fly now is a Spectrum.
Nice.
DX6E.
Nice.
DX6E or DX6, one of the two.
Cool. So basically, actually, in some ways, when you're setting up your aircraft, you're like, yep, it's that whole analogy when we're doing video, and okay, I'm listening to the audio on the cheapest set of speakers I have because someone's gonna go, it didn't sound good on my speakers, and you're gonna be like, what are you talking about? But that's exactly, that's really good. I started out the same way, man. Sam, like when I got into it was budget, and I laughed. There is a video when I was flying FPV with the Bixler, and 9X, the Turnigy stuff, and FPV did not mix, and I didn't realize that the throttle, I had lost the throttle, and the ESC had reset, and I glided, and I'm like, man, this plane is flying really weird, and I'm going back up down, and I got no throttle, and I glided in, and it was only until I watched the onboard audio, the video with the onboard, that I heard the motor spin down, and I'm like, wow, and so that was it for that. No
Do you know
more.
the problem I had with my Turnigy 9X? And I don't know whether it was just mine specifically, but anytime I'd go to trim, and if I did more, if I like held the trim down like you do when you're trimming, you know that. Whenever I do that, it would disconnect from the receiver. So I had a dead stick plane in the air.
Wow.
And so I usually had to take it up like 4 or 5 mistakes high,
Trim
and then trim it and expect it to do something, or I'd have to do trimming 1 click at a time or 1 or 2 clicks at a time. But I didn't dare go because it would cut out on me, and I'm just like, oh.
I remember, particularly with the Bixler, I got the programming so complex between the flaps and all this stuff, and that the radio would actually slow down. It was really weird.
No.
You know, I guess the processor wasn't keeping. It was really weird, but it was like, okay, it was odd. So now like I said, I fly with my Tyrannus. I've got the 9X. I do have a 6, the DX9. Sorry, I've got a DX6 and a buddy passed me. And for all the upcoming big FPV ships, I'm going TBS Crossfire. So because I'm doing all the iNav stuff and everything, and flying with flight controllers, but that's all for the FPV.
Yeah.
That's the FPV ships basically, so that return to home is there, just as a CYA kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. That was nice. Question number 31. Do you have any other hobbies?
Yeah. Many, actually. Too many. My wife says I have too many. No, she's she's awesome. She humors all my craziness. One of my biggest ones is geocaching. I've kind of gotten out of it a little bit, but I do geocache quite a bit.
Nice.
If you don't know what that is, we find Tupperware in the woods with multi-million-dollar satellites. I actually have some model railroad stuff that I inherited from my dad that I really enjoy doing. We mainly get those out around the holidays, but it's kind of fun. And I still have all my old model rockets. So
cool.
Those are kind of the big ones.
Nice. One of my buddies one of the other guys I know from Great Hobbies loves his model rockets. I've never tried it, but
you got to try at least once in your life.
Might we'll see. Question number 39. Bank and yank or rudder?
Bank and yank.
Yeah. So are you telling me the Texan won't have a rudder, or will it have a rudder?
The Texan does have a rudder.
I was going to say, but that one wants one.
I mean, I started out with the Vulture. It was a 3-channel, rudder, elevator, throttle. So, but I've come when I fly with. I'll be honest, when I fly with 4-channel, I rarely touch that rudder. I know coordinated turns. I know there's going to be some people out there saying, "Hey," but I bank and yank. It's just the way I fly. You forgot to ring the bell, by the way. There you go.
I like the rudder in certain airplanes, like things like the FT Racer. So if you're going up and doing your hammerheads and stuff like that, you kick that rudder over, or if you're coming in every so often. It is a nice skill to have, because that's why the A10 hasn't flown this year, because I skipped that thing off the deck because I yanked instead of doing a rudder turn and keeping the wing flat. It all depends on the complexity of the aircraft as well, I think, too. But
very, very true.
Yeah. 40C or 60C?
Oh, 40 probably, because I don't own a 60C battery.
What?
I don't.
Power.
I have a 40.
Power.
I know.
When you start flying those EDF jets.
Oh, I know. Well, in my very first 2300 or 2200 3-cells were 40Cs. That's just what I bought.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I still have a whack of my 25 and 35Cs, and then over the years things are just gone up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah. But, I just with Dan's plane. Remember, there was a contest sponsored by Venom. You remember that, right? I actually got second place in that, and that's where I got my very first 4-cell battery. Believe it or not. Was from Venom, and I'll be honest,
the parallels,
amazing.
The parallels when you describe the equipment and everything it's frightening. It is frightening. And until I got into the jets, I was very, very aware because, okay, early days, it was super easy to get batteries, particularly here in Canada, right? Like, it was like every time I did on Hobby King order, it was, just throw in a $10 3S20, 2200, 25 or 35C, the Zippy Compact, every single time I did an order because shipping was cheap and there was no mail problems. And then it changed, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, I can't get batteries without spending a fortune. Oh, no, now I got to go through FedEx and the fees and everything. So I was very, very, very okay. And it's like, all right, if I buy this airplane, can I fly it with these batteries? If I do this airplane, can I fly it with these batteries? That has changed with the whole jet thing because now I have more 6S packs than I care to think about, and it's a serious, serious investment. And and it's like, well, I want to fly this airplane, so I need these batteries, and this is coming, now I need these batteries. So it's like, okay, when I build stuff, or when you build stuff, is that something you guys are cognizant about for your designs?
Absolutely, and like you said, I was in the hobby back when a 2200 Zippy compact was $10 or less, from Hobby King. And so, yes, we're very aware of the power systems that we're using because we have to be. One thing we haven't been able to spec or get from our supplier or manufacturer is the motor for the Wasp. I have people ask me, do you have those in stock yet? I'm like, no. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with COVID. I'm sure it has a lot to do with, stuff out of China is super slow, but we haven't been able to source that motor yet. So I have to say, well, you're going to have to go to Hobby King, or you're going to have to go to, Flight Test or wherever to get those motors because we can't get them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? You're not alone. It's interesting that actually, speaking of, we're digressing from our speed to our hot seat, but did you guys, you had your manufacturing problems, but did you guys actually see an uptick in demand during the COVID, especially the early stuff in the spring?
The early stuff we did, and then it kind of died off, I think, especially here in the States, as people started realizing that, I don't know about financially, but I think people started getting a little bit scared, I think. But in the early stages, we were selling quite a bit. But, cool. The last stages, July, it died off a little bit. But,
well, people aren't building, they're flying at this point, right? They're trying to get out a little tiny bit. And even myself, I like last weekend was like, that's it, I'm going out. And like I said, the guys were
go insane, right?
The guys were super cool about it. Everybody gave me my little perimeter because it's like, sorry, Andre's like considered high risk. So, all right. Question. Well, what question was this one? Number 26. What was your first car?
68 Volkswagen Bug.
Nice, dude.
I still have it. It's down in my hometown on the farm in a shed. I would love to have my son bring it up and off the farm and rebuild the engine like I did when I was a kid, and have my son drive it. But we'll see.
That'll come.
It's a death trap car, but I still have the car though. So.
Hey man, I was out this afternoon. I had to go see my parents and everything, and we're November, and it was like 17 degrees. So the GT6 went out for a little bit of a drive, and one of the neighbors saw me blasting down the street, so I dropped down a gear and the main road.
That's a pretty car, by the way. Very pretty car.
Yeah, it's my little toy. Nice. So Volkswagen Bug. Nice, man. All right. You've already answered that one. All right, we won't do too many more of these because they're going in. I love this question. Velcro. Fuzzy on the battery or fuzzy in the fuselage?
Fuzzy on the battery.
Really? Or is it so sorry. I don't have a battery around here. So you put yes. Sorry, never mind.
The fuzzy on the battery.
Yeah.
Because then your fingers are never in the fuselage except to put the battery in. You're constantly touching your batteries.
Yeah, exactly. It's not attracting. It's not getting everything. Yes. Yeah, my bad. It's been a while since I've answered that one or asked that question. All right. Fast or slow?
Slow.
Slow flyer?
Slow.
Really?
Yeah. So, I love I started out with the the vintage planes. Yeah. There's something relaxing about, for example, our Vulture. There's something relaxing about just putting it up and it's hands off. You just enjoy
honestly,
in the air.
it is a design testament to the aircraft. If it slows down, it was one of our flyers at my group, Matt, who unfortunately passed away last year, used to just go nuts with me because I'd do things like take my T-28 and I'd slow that thing down to a crawl. And he's like, It's a warbird. It's a military plane. It should be doing like 75% throttle. It should be just hauling. What are you doing, Andre? And I'm laughing going, if the plane falls out of the sky, the moment I drop down to 50% throttle, it's not designed well. So it's got to go slow. It's interesting. Nice.
It's so relaxing. And I'll be honest, with my favorite things to do, and shameless plug for our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/thehangarrc. But you get on there, there's a video of me flying the Vulture in like 15 to 20 mile an hour wind.
Yes. And
it just hangs. And to be able to, with the Vulture, to hand the transmitter off to my kids. I know we have a buddy box system. We have 2 Turnigy 9Xs, but to be able to hand it off and just say, if you get in trouble, just let go of the sticks, and that polydihedral kicks in, and it will just, and so it's something about a slow flying airplane that just gets me every time.
Cool. $2,000 plane or $2,100 planes?
Oh, I've never had either, so I don't have an answer for that because I don't know what that would be like.
$50,000 plane and like, $500 planes.
Right.
Oh, right. 10.
Yeah, I do like, we've been Vans RV for our 7. The company actually reached out to us and we were kind of recognized for producing the 7 because it was modeled after a Vans RV 7. So I kind of taken a liking to those full scale airframes. They're beautiful.
Nice. Ooh, I like this one. Question number 43, and after this we'll start wrapping up little things. If you had to fly the same plane for 6 months, what would you pick?
I would have to pick. Obviously, I'm going to say one of our own airframes, but I would have to pick the Vulture.
Cool.
Just because I can give it to my kids. I can, it's funny. It will actually do it like with a 2200 1400 kV. It'll do unlimited vertical. We've done some crazy barrel rolls with it only on a 3-channel, which is weird, but it looks funny. But yeah, I would go with the Vulture. Nice.
And we'll number 33. What's your favorite RC aircraft of all time?
If I had to pick one, I would say the Flight Test Tiny Trainer, only because I built hundreds of them probably. I built so many of those things. But I would probably say R7. It is a fun aircraft to fly. It really is. It's it's an easy sport airplane if you're just getting into sport flying. Mm-hmm. It's a fun air. It's easy to build. It goes inverted like nobody's business. Very little up is required when it's inverted. And so I would say the 7.
Very cool. All right. I'm going to end on the last question of this one here. What is your favorite part of the hobby?
Flying with friends and family. I love taking my family. That's the best part. Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to fly with my dad in a while. He's kind of retired from flying, but he'll build for me occasionally. Actually, he's fixing my VTX transmitter as we do this podcast. So
there you go.
My little micro FPV camera, which I blew the antenna bit off of. He's fixing that for me. So, and one day I'll get my son back into it, but he's into his Minecraft and video games. So, say let me. Awesome. Sam, actually, we've got a few things I want to do before we wrap up the show. Wrong mouse.
There was a question there. Does the HRC7 fly slow? Yes, it does. It can fly fast. It can fly slow. It's a very versatile airframe. And we wanted it that way because, once again, easy to build, easy to fly, right? And it can fly really slow. If you get on our YouTube channel, Funky Pops, you'll be able to see some of our footage, especially in the first of the build video. You'll be able to see some of the footage, and it slows down beautifully. Doesn't drop wingtips at all.
What's the span on that one?
It's about 40. Is it 40 or 47 inches? Somewhere around 40, 45 inches, somewhere around there.
Cool.
I think it's closer to 40.
Nice. And again, like you said, with these smaller aircraft, the shipping and everything are it's a lot more reasonable. So,
For sure.
yeah,
For sure.
versus that big behemoth behind us. So, all right, Sam, let's bring you back up. We got the chat there in the background. Anyhow, any last points before we wrap up the segment with you, and we'll talk about some of the other stuff that's going on, and we'll call this show a wrap.
Yeah. If you haven't experienced one of our airframes, I suggest you give it a try. Andre's a testament to it, and I'm hoping to get Andre some more airframes so he can try them out. But there's something about when you have an airframe that looks real in the sky, and especially when you don't have to paint them. A regular Adams foam board doesn't paint well unless you put some urethane on it. But there's something special about skinning an airframe and the way it looks in the sky. I've had people that have said to our airframes, is that is that a balsa build, or is that, how'd you get all the detail? And it's just skin, and there's something about that. And that, like I said, that's our bread and butter. And if you haven't given it a try, go on our website, download the free plans, order one of our quick kits. It really does save a ton of time if you order the quick kit. But those are some great ways to support us. But the skinning is where I love to design. I love to skin. I love scale looks. I'm a sucker for scale airframes. So nice. Give us a try.
And so two things. Sam has been very gracious, and he's sent out a podcast for the RC Afterhours podcast, a 10% off coupon code. Hell yeah, one word. Hell yeah, all 8 letters, and that is good till the end of February 2021. So thehangarrc.com for that, and I'm still working out the details, but Sam, if you want to fill them in on the next little goodie that you're talking about.
We are going to give away a Texan to the RC After Hours Patreon supporters. So if you're a Patreon supporter, correct me if I'm wrong, Andre, but you're automatically entered into the competition, or to the drawing, I should say. If you're not a Patreon supporter, we're going to give you some time to sign up to be a Patreon supporter. Relatively affordable. I think you send out a couple stickers, correct me if I'm wrong, for the different levels of support. But we're still working out the details, but sometime in the future, in one of the next couple episodes of RC After Hours, we will be giving that Texan away. They're not in production yet, so we will send it out as soon as the pre-sales are sent out, or as soon as they're going out, we'll send that out.
Very cool. And speaking of things for the Patreons, again, thanks guys for supporting the podcast. It makes a big difference. I will have to get busy with John in the U.S. and order some of those awesome new decals. They are on the, if you go to the swag, it's shop.spreadshirt.com/RC Afterhours. I do have stickers there that you can buy, and there are going to be some promotional sales, so drop into the store occasionally. The Spreadshirt guys run occasional sales where there's discounts and free shipping and stuff. I will try and get some of the decals done, in which you guys can order up from us directly from the podcast and have them shipped out, and go from there. And then Sam, one of the actually no, there are a couple Blame Andre T-shirts that are out there, which is really cool. I've got my Blame Andre cap, which my wife absolutely thinks it's hilarious when I wear it, because she's like, you have to explain it, but I did. This was something she got me for my birthday. There's my RC Afterhours with the new logo, and Nathan Knight. I've said this so many times. For those watching the podcast, there's a couple of videos out now about this. Whoops, I whacked my microphone. Nathan has got a laser engraver for those listening on the audio portion of this, and he was very, very gracious. He embedded the logo onto some pallet wood, and it looks stunning. Check out some of the social media stuff on the Instagram. Nathan, thank you, sir. He paid for shipping from California to Canada on some wood. It looks gorgeous. I showed this to my wife, and she was so impressed. I don't know where it's going to hang here in the studio. I'm probably going to find a really nice prominent spot. Probably a really good excuse to paint that wall behind my head because my basement's half painted, but that's like a winter project, right? 2 years ago. It should have been done. Again, right. Priorities. So again, Nathan, thank you, man. It really made my week. Put that there. Well, yeah, it's gonna slide and fly off. So yeah, there's lots of fun stuff going on. It's been a really fun week. There's Nathan's. Look at that sticker. Everybody's got stickers, but I'm so happy that logo turned out, and it's just kind of redefining how the show goes. Apparently, a few people have already actually bought stickers off the Spreadshirt.com one. But like I said, I'll set up a new. We did this earlier on with some of the when we were issuing the old stickers, and we still have a whack of those, so we'll probably do a combo and everything because there's nothing wrong with the old logo as well. We were due. So yes, so coupon codes, remember that? Hell yeah. That was yes, I was feeling punchy that day.
That was your idea.
Yeah, I was feeling punchy, and it's funny, so I'm like, so yeah, the stickers are there. I've been having a ton of fun getting these all these wings together and everything. I will fly that one, the Sky Hunter 1.8 meter twin, or the SH-18T. Will fly eventually. It's almost set up to go manual. I was gonna go 6. Those motors can't handle it, so I'm gonna have to save up and buy some lower kV motors because I want to run that thing on 6S, because then all the 4S can go in the other ones. The Heli Killer, which is sitting behind me, I'm waiting on a bigger motor, which is back ordered because the one I bought was too small, but I'm still gonna try it. Again, all these wings, everything are gonna go manual, and then eventually there'll be iNav, so I can do auto launch and be spoiled and everything. So it's gonna be a lot of fun technology. I've been really pushing myself in the last couple of weeks to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and flying harder and harder. I'm actually, and the guys joked at the field, I'm looking forward to winter because there'll be less people there. It sounds so crazy and so stupid. Minus 35 Celsius. Who's going to be out flying? Andre will be. So, all right. Oh God, I cannot wait for the winter just to get out flying and just to have all kinds of fun. So, all right, patrons, thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for coming on. All the people on the show who are watching watching live stream, thank you so much. We're gonna keep pushing. We're gonna keep having fun. Sam, it's been a super pleasure having you on as a guest. You made it easy for me this weekend. And I can't wait to get flying that jet. I will poly it all up so it will survive the winter, and I will fly it for all it's worth. So I'm Andre. My guest this afternoon or this evening has been Sam from the Hangar RC. Check out hangarrc.com for all the products we were talking about, and we'll get him back on the show to do the Patreon release. So if you're a Patreon right now, or the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, or whatever, get your name in there. We will do an auto draw, and Sam will announce who's getting a Texan. All right.
Yes. Thank
you very much, sir. Queuing up some extra music, and we will have to do this again very soon. Have a great evening. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Ciao.